The concept of criminal mind manipulation exists in the criminal code. It's a specific type of psychological influence aimed at driving someone to commit certain illegal acts. Often, it is used during the planning and execution of unlawful schemes, with the goal of pulling a specific person or multiple individuals into these actions. Manipulators might play on emotions or resort to blackmail. But what happens when a criminal duo consists of two manipulators, each thinking they're the smarter and more dominant one? The case of a young woman named Lisa Paspalakis, then Fotopoulos, shocked the quiet resort town of Daytona Beach in Volusia County, Florida, in November 1989. She was shot in the head while peacefully asleep in her bed. The shooter was taken down by Lisa's husband right at the scene, preventing him from fleeing the house. It seemed like an open and shut case. The attacker was dead, and the victim's husband was a hero. However, the story was far more complex. During the investigation, authorities uncovered another fatal incident, along with a sinister plan involving two accomplices, each with their own hidden motives and a belief that they could escape justice. Who were Lisa Paspalakis and Costa Fotopoulos? Lisa Fotopoulos, née Paspalakis, came from a wealthy family of Greek immigrants. Her parents had moved to the United States and settled in Florida in the early 1960s. They established a thriving business in a popular tourist area, which they steadily grew. And by the early 1970s, they owned several successful companies that brought in substantial income. The Paspalakis family had two children. Lisa was the eldest, and a few years later, her younger brother Dino was born. Their parents adored their children, raising them with love, care, and a desire to give them the best of everything. After finishing high school, Lisa enrolled in a prestigious local college and later attended the University of South Florida, where she studied economics and accounting. Once she graduated, this smart and responsible young woman joined the family business, managing the accounting for 3 of her parents' companies. It's worth noting that by the mid-1980s, Daytona Beach had become home to one of the largest Greek communities in the state. Members of this community were known for supporting one another and maintaining close connections as much as possible. They cherished their culture, customs, and traditions, striving to preserve them and pass them on to the next generation. When it comes to Konstantinos, or simply Costa Fotopoulos, he was born and raised on the Greek island of Euboea in a middle-class family. After finishing high school, he managed, with the help of relatives and members of the Greek diaspora, to emigrate to the United States, where he continued his education at a university in Florida. Costa was described as ambitious, confident, and bold, someone who loved being the center of attention. He had a natural charisma and leadership skills, and he was determined to live a glamorous high society lifestyle. A match made by tradition. When Lisa turned 20, her parents began searching for a suitable partner for her. The conservative Paspalakis couple wanted their daughter to marry within the community, and they only considered Greek men as potential sons-in-law. This practice of elders finding matches for their children was an ancient tradition that remained common in Greek communities, and so Lisa did not resist. Costa, tall, attractive, and well-educated, seemed like the perfect candidate for the Paspalakis family. By that time, he was already well known in Daytona Beach, building his own business, and enjoyed significant popularity among women due to his good looks, intelligence, and powerful charm. The young couple accepted their parents' choice. The families organized a lavish wedding for them and ensured that the newlyweds had everything they needed for a comfortable life together. Although it was a traditional arranged marriage, the pair still appeared to be genuinely happy. A family loss and moving back home. In the fall of 1988, Lisa's father passed away suddenly, a devastating blow for the family. Lisa couldn't bear to leave her grieving mother alone, so she and Costa moved into her parents' house. The estate was a spacious mansion, with one wing occupied by the widowed Mrs. Paspalakis and her younger son, Dino, while Lisa and Costa settled into the other wing. In essence, living under the same roof, they could still have their privacy, as each part of the house was self-sufficient, offering all the comforts they needed. A new business and suspicious associates. In the southern part of Daytona Beach, there was a bar owned by a man named Tony Calderoni. It was a popular spot, even though it was relatively small. Tony was a skilled businessman who knew how to run his establishment and attract customers. but he hadn't yet accumulated enough capital to expand his ventures. That's when Costa approached him with a proposal to join forces and open a new venue together. Calderoni had experience in such ventures, and Fotopoulos was willing to invest a significant amount of money into their joint business. By early 1989, the two men had opened a bar called Top Shots Pool Hall. Notably, Costa used funds from his wife's family for this, as he had no personal savings to invest. Everything he had earned previously was spent on entertainment, luxuries, and firearms, for which he had a particular fascination. Top Shots Pool Hall quickly became the most popular spot on the Daytona Beach boardwalk. Every evening, it attracted hundreds of tourists as well as locals. However, in the late 80s, Daytona Beach was not exactly safe after dark. The area was home to numerous drifters and young runaways who engaged in petty theft and could cause trouble. Surprisingly, Costa managed to get a grip on the situation, earning respect and establishing authority over these street teens. Not only did they avoid causing problems for the bar and its patrons, but they also began carrying out small tasks for the owners in exchange for a little cash. Essentially, Costa was employing the labor of these runaways, who took on the most difficult and undesirable jobs. Costa managed to instill a mix of fear and admiration in them, boasting about how wealthy and influential he was, and claiming connections in both political circles and the underground world. The aimless youth on the streets believed the stories he told them, especially since he promised to help them succeed if they listened to him and followed his instructions. Deceptive charm. In the spring of 1989, a 20-year-old woman named Deidre Hunt arrived in Daytona Beach. Originally from a small provincial town in New Hampshire, she grew up in a poor and troubled family and had essentially run away the first chance she got. She headed south, drawn by the warm ocean, and was looking for any kind of work she could find. Deidre had striking, incredibly attractive looks, a slender figure, and a certain charm that drove men wild. She was fully aware of her appeal and knew how to use it to her advantage. It was easy for her to start romances, but her lovers rarely sought a serious relationship with her. The young beauty walked into Top Shots Pool Hall and was immediately hired as a waitress. Her job was to serve customers while dressed in a tiny beach bikini. But this didn't bother her at all. She felt comfortable and confident in the skimpy outfit, flirted with patrons, and earned excellent tips. In fact, the bar's popularity noticeably increased after Deidre was brought on board. Romance with a devil. Costa was instantly captivated by the young waitress, and he began showing her affection. Deidre quickly made it clear she was open to a workplace romance with the boss. Their relationship progressed quickly, though they tried to keep it under wraps to avoid gossip and scandal. Costa arranged for his new lover to stay in a comfortable room at a hotel near Top Shots Pool Hall. He covered her expenses, showered her with gifts, bought her stylish clothes, and took her on yacht trips out to the open sea where they wouldn't be seen. They spent a lot of time together, but always chose places where Costa was unknown, minimizing the chances of running into anyone familiar. Lisa, being a perceptive young woman, quickly realized that her husband was seeing someone else, and she didn't buy his feeble excuses. Still, she had no concrete proof of his infidelity and didn't know who the other woman was. That changed on October 20th, 1989, when a close friend informed her that she had seen Costa with a young woman who appeared to work at a bar on the boardwalk. The betrayed wife immediately figured out who it was, and that same evening, Costa returned home to a serious and rather unpleasant conversation. Lisa confronted him, saying she knew about his affair and was aware of the woman's identity. She demanded that he end the relationship immediately before it became public and brought shame to their family. Otherwise, she threatened to file for divorce, evict him from the luxurious house owned by her family, take the car, strip him of all financial benefits, and go to court to recover the money he had used to open the bar. Money that came from her relatives. Costa pretended to understand, acknowledged his mistake, and expressed sincere regret. He promised to break things off with Deidre and make amends with his wife. For the next couple of weeks, he played the role of the perfect husband, trying to calm Lisa down and lull her into a false sense of security. In reality, Costa was terrified of losing what he had and being cut off from the Paspalakis family's assets and accounts. He concluded that the only way to secure everything was to inherit it after his wife's passing. With this in mind, he began plotting a sinister crime. Costa intended to have Lisa killed, but in a way that would keep him above suspicion. To do this, he needed accomplices, and he started carefully scouting for them among the street kids who idolized him. The shooting at the family home. In the early hours of November 4th, 1989, an anxious young man called the emergency services, reporting that several gunshots had been fired inside his home, though he couldn't say exactly what was happening. The caller was Lisa Paspalakis, Lisa's younger brother, who had been awakened by the noise and was unsure what to do. He told his mother to lock herself in her bedroom, then went downstairs to meet the arriving officers. Together, they headed to the wing of the house where Lisa and her husband Costa lived. According to Dino, this was where he had heard the shots, and now he could hear groans and pleas for help. The scene that greeted the police was terrifying. On the bed, lying in a pool of her own blood, was a young woman with a gunshot wound to her head. Costa was holding her, desperately begging the officers to save his wife. On the floor, face down near the bed, was the lifeless body of an unidentified young man. He had been shot multiple times, and a revolver lay beside him. Another handgun was on the nightstand near the bed. Costa's account was that while he and his wife were sleeping, an intruder, likely a robber, broke into their room and shot Lisa in the head. The intruder didn't get a chance to escape because Costa, awakened by the noise, grabbed a handgun he kept in the nightstand for self-defense. He fired 5 shots at the intruder and then finished him off with one final shot to the head. Fotopoulos claimed that in the darkness and confusion, he could barely understand what was happening, and he instinctively reached for the gun to protect himself, his home, and his wife. It was only after he had taken down the intruder that he realized Lisa was severely injured and bleeding. Fortunately, Dino had quickly called for help, and the police and medics arrived within minutes. Not a criminal, but a hero. The wounded woman was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Although no one could make any guarantees at that moment, it soon became clear that she was going to survive. But Costa's reaction to the good news was strange. He contacted his lawyer and asked for help to avoid facing charges for the incident. The attorney, however, reassured him, stating that Costa wasn't a criminal, but a hero who had taken down a dangerous intruder threatening his wife. Since the Paspalakis family was quite well known and influential, the story quickly spread to the public and received extensive media coverage. Most of the comments on the case came from Fotopoulos' attorney, who portrayed Costa as a brave and courageous man, a true hero who had stood up to an armed attacker. The incident was largely considered a failed robbery attempt. The narrative suggested that the intruder broke into a wealthy home, tried to eliminate the owners as potential witnesses, but Costa fought back fiercely and took down the intruder on the spot. This version of events was widely circulated in the press, and the almost widowed man was indeed celebrated as a hero. Strange crime scene. During their examination of the house, detectives noticed that one of the segments of the glass sliding doors on the ground floor was shattered. It seemed obvious that this was how the intruder had entered. However, the glass fragments were scattered on both sides of the door, which was unusual if the breakage had occurred from the outside. Initially, though, this detail didn't get much attention. The deceased intruder had no money or valuables on him, items he could have easily taken once inside the house. This suggested that after breaking the glass and getting in, he went straight to the master bedroom, which didn't make sense. He had passed by antiques, artwork, and a jewelry box left in plain sight, all untouched. Moreover, the intruder had shot the woman, who posed the least threat, and she was sleeping on the far side of the bed, away from the door. This meant he bypassed Costa to get to her and fired at close range. But why would he do this when it would have been more logical to deal with the man first? Anonymous tip and the criminal's clever plan. On November 7th, 3 days after the incident at the Paspalakis home, a young man called the police, saying that a week earlier he had been offered money to kill Lisa. According to him, the proposal came from Deidre Hunt, who was having an affair with Lisa's husband, and this information was soon confirmed. It turned out that many people, if they didn't know about the affair, at least suspected it. Deidre needed to be arrested and questioned immediately because she was, at the very least, aware of the crime being planned. Deidre was apprehended that same day without any resistance, and it was clear that this turn of events didn't surprise her. She immediately expressed her willingness to cooperate with the investigation, but also stated that she feared for her life and wanted guarantees for her safety. The waitress claimed that Costa might kill her if he found out she had begun talking to the police. Hunt confessed that her affair with Fotopoulos began last summer. She was aware he was married, but that didn't bother her. Her wealthy lover had promised her that they would enjoy a glamorous life together. But for that to happen, Lisa had to be out of the picture. As a result, Costa would not only inherit her assets, but also receive a hefty insurance payout. Deidre took it upon herself to find a hitman, and after a couple of failed attempts, she managed to hire 18-year-old Brian Chase, to whom she promised $5,000 for the job. She also gave him a revolver that Costa had handed over, which was meant to be the weapon, and instructed him on how to get into the house. The plan was originally set for November 2nd, but the inexperienced hitman only managed to get inside on his third attempt. The first day, he was scared off by a car suddenly pulling up to a neighboring house. On the second day, Brian failed to break the sturdy glass door and almost woke up the entire neighborhood with the noise. By the third day, Costa was fed up and broke the glass himself, causing the shards to fall outside rather than inside the house. Chase managed to get inside and, following the instructions, headed straight to the master bedroom. His gun was loaded with 5 bullets, which he was supposed to fire at the sleeping Lisa's head, but after the first shot, the gun jammed. At that moment, the victim's husband, Costa, opened fire and took down the hitman. When the police asked if Costa had planned to pay Brian, Deidre said no. According to her, the hitman was doomed from the start because Costa never intended to leave any evidence or witnesses behind. The first victim. During questioning, it came out that a few weeks before the attempt on Lisa's life, Costa and his lover had taken the life of another young man from among the homeless youth who trusted the businessman. His name was Mark Kevin Ramsey, and he had just turned 19. The criminal duo lured him into the woods, convincing him to let them tie him to a tree under the pretense of performing some kind of initiation ritual. Once Mark was immobilized, Costa handed Deidre a handgun with a silencer and ordered her to shoot the young man. Meanwhile, he stepped back, took out a video camera, and recorded everything. Naturally, Costa was not visible in the footage, but his voice could be heard giving orders. Deidre claimed that she was afraid of her lover and did everything he told her to. She fired 3 shots into the young man's chest, then finished him off with a shot to the head. Her story sounded bizarre and almost unbelievable, but she pointed out the location where it all happened. Soon, investigators found a decomposed body tied to a tree with 4 gunshot wounds, just as she had described. But why would they target an innocent young man who trusted Costa? Detectives believed that Costa, the manipulative schemer, wanted leverage over Deidre to keep her from going to the police. By involving her in this crime, he had effectively made her an accomplice, ensuring that if he were ever caught, she would be heading to prison with him. Testimony from a surviving victim and irrefutable evidence. After Deidre's account and the discovery of the body in the woods, police arrested Costa and brought him in for questioning. As expected, he denied any wrongdoing, insisting that he loved his wife and would never hurt her. He called Deidre a liar and blackmailer who was obsessed with him. Costa claimed that she might have hired the hitman herself to eliminate her rival, saying that Deidre wasn't just in love with him, she was infatuated and wanted the same glamorous, wealthy lifestyle. By then, Lisa, who had been in the hospital, had regained consciousness and was able to give her statement. She revealed that she knew about her husband's affairs and had threatened him with divorce at the end of October, warning that she would cut him off from all financial benefits. After that, Costa had promised to break up with his lover and tried to make amends. But shortly before the attack, Lisa noticed Costa acting suspiciously in the backyard of their house, and she had a feeling that he was hiding something near the barbecue area. A search warrant was issued the same day, and detectives did indeed find a securely hidden black bag in the spot Lisa had mentioned. Inside, there was a handgun with a silencer. Ballistic tests confirmed that it was the weapon used to kill Ramsey, which corroborated Deidre's statement, though only her fingerprints were found on the gun. Without the video, it was difficult to hold Costa accountable, but during further searches, the crucial tape was found in a bag hidden in the garage. The footage clearly showed Hunt firing 3 shots at the young man tied to the tree, then finishing him off with a shot to the head. However, it was hard to definitively identify whose male voice was heard off camera. Both individuals involved in this high-profile case were facing the death penalty, and they knew it, so each tried to shift the blame onto the other. Not as simple as she seems. During the investigation, it was revealed that Hunt's mother suffered from a mental illness and was often hospitalized during her episodes. She hardly took care of her daughter, who, it seemed, may have inherited the condition. At the age of 10, Deidre was subjected to inappropriate behavior from one of her mother's partners. As a teenager, Deidre realized the power of her looks, which drove men crazy, and she began using it to her advantage. Costa was the first person who seriously promised to marry her, and since life with him promised to be comfortable and secure, the idea of getting rid of his wife for insurance and inheritance seemed like an excellent plan. She actively participated in planning the crime, sought out a hitman, and even suggested to her lover that they get rid of the killer afterward, framing it as a failed robbery. Deidre turned out to be just as cunning a manipulator as Costa and just as greedy for money. However, the moment the police began closing in on her, she immediately turned on her lover, trying to save her own life, minimize her culpability, and lessen her sentence. Trial and verdict. The trial of the two offenders began in October 1990. By then, Lisa had recovered enough to take the stand and testify against the criminal duo. She was the first to unequivocally state that the voice on the tape belonged to her husband, a voice she could never mistake for anyone else's. Her testimony was later confirmed. Deidre claimed that Costa, off camera, was threatening her with a weapon, and if she didn't kill Mark, he would have taken them both out. However, the footage did not show her looking frightened. Instead, she appeared calm and even asked the cameraman not to shine the light in her eyes but to focus it on the victim. Costa, on the other hand, maintained that all the evidence against him was fabricated and that Deidre was the one who decided to destroy his life. He continued to assert that there had been an intruder in his home and he was merely defending himself and his wife. Yet the decisive piece of evidence that confirmed his guilt was that very tape, which had been recorded to serve as leverage and as a means of blackmailing the young lover. On October 25, 1990, both defendants were found guilty of conspiracy, the premeditated murder of Ramsey, and the attempted taking of Lisa's life. Additionally, Costa was found guilty of the murder of Brian Chase. The criminal pair was sentenced to death by electric chair. In 1995, Deidre's case was reviewed, and her death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Her lover and accomplice, Costa, repeatedly filed appeals, but his sentence remained unchanged. To this day, Costa sits on death row, awaiting his fate.